This is a review for stage 4 test. Um, we're going to start off with the things that I feel like are most important in this stage. They are telling the person of a verb. Who is the subject of a verb? I give you 3 letters here, O, S, and T. Each one of those letters signifies who the subject of a sentence is. O is I, S is you, and T is the singular form of a noun. So if I see a word like amo, your book so far has given you ego. That eventually will go away, and the translation is I love. Same thing with the S. If I get amos, the S ends it. Your book has given you 2 so far. That eventually will go away. The subject is you, and then the verb is love. With a mot, so far you're getting a subject of some kind. For example, servus in the nominative form, and you get the slave loves. You're going to have to identify verbs based off of their endings and how to translate each one of them. So be aware that you're going to be looking at these S's and these O's and these T's to determine who the subject of those verbs might be. You're also going to have the us, third declension ending as well for those nominatives. Remember that. So our singular nominatives end in a, us, or they have that third declension that has whatever. Conjugation of sum is also going to be fairly important. We get sum. It does not have an O. It has an M. So I'm going to use I am. That M signifies I for sum. You get ace. You are. That S tells me that it's you. And then est, that T tells me it's he, she, or it. As I move down here, I give you some examples of words. We're going to be using sum words for this. So what I want you to do is I want you to hit pause, and down here at the bottom, I want you to use one of these words to put into those blanks. So you can have sum words along with regular verbs. So hit pause, try this out, and see if you get them right. In the first one, I have to. And to determine whether or not it's an action verb or not, I need to look at this one. This is a nominative. Only a sum word can link 2 nominatives together. So I'm going to choose ace here. If this were accusative, I would be looking for an action verb, but because it's a nominative, I'm going to use ace. Here we have the slave in Kalina. I could use est if I wanted to, but I'm going to choose laborat because I want him doing something in the kitchen. So S would fit here, but it's really not the best answer, and you'll see that later here in a second. I get ego, and here I do get an accusative, so I need to have an action verb. Can't use est or sum or ace to connect 2 things that aren't nominative. So I have a nominative in ego, and I have an accusative. I need an action verb. The only one down here is reveiw for first person. And I'm looking at the O to match with the ego. Just like I looked over here, I had 2 to match with the S. Okay, next one is ego bonus. Those are both nominatives. So I need some kind of word that is sum, ace, or est. I look at ego, that's first person. Sum is first person, so I fill it in. I have grumio and kokwus. Both are nominative. So I need one of the sum words again. Grumio is third person, so I use est. Here I get a nominative and an accusative. Okay, 2, I need something that ends in an S, and I have vivus. I looked at these verbs as I was picking them. I looked at them And the first thing that I look at to determine which one of those I'm going to use is I want to make sure that I don't have two nominatives together. If I do have two nominatives together, then I'm going to use a form of soon. If I have a nominative and an accusative, then I'm going to use an action verb. So action verbs right here, and right here. I have a nominative and accusative. Here I didn't have an accusative. I probably should have put one in there for you. I didn't. But when I had two nominatives, I needed to use one of those linking verbs to link those together. You're also going to need to know the pronouns that go with the conjugation of soon. So as I look at these, soon uses what pronoun? Well, I have three. I have ego, I have two, and then I have a nominative noun. We don't really have any pronouns that go with third person. So ego would go with soon. So sum ego. Ace two. So two ace. And then the nominative would go with s. If I were making a sentence here, I would say, I am the teacher. And I would use my geese there in the nominative form. I wouldn't put it in the accusative form. For ace, I would have two ace. You are whatever you are. If you are a slave, you need to be in the nominative form. And then s, if I have the slave is, and if I have him as he is a good slave, I would need both of them to be in nominatives. These verbs link two nominatives together. That's why we call them linking verbs. Okay, I'm going to go down to these words. These are English words that you're going to need to be aware of. I want you to hit pause. I want you to go into your dictionary and see which one of these words, or you can look at them first of all and see which ones you know, and then look up the words that you do not know. I also want you to figure out how they're related to some of the vocab that we've had. Okay, some of these words that we're dealing with. Impecunious, coming from our pecunia, which is money. So M meaning not having any money. So if I'm penniless or I'm broke or I'm poor, I would use that adjective. A vendor is someone who sells something, coming from wendeo, which is to sell. Mendacity comes from mendax. Mendax means liar. Mendacity is the act of lying. So judicial comes from judex, which is to judge. So if I were using judicial, I would be referencing something that has to do with the court, something that is legal in matter. Vocabulary is the study of words and what they mean. Avocation from voco, which is to call. A means away from. Our avocation is when we are called away from our vocation. Our vocation is what we do for our job, and avocation would be our side interest or our hobby. Insatiable, coming from satis, which is enough. Insatiable means that it's never enough, so you can't ever feel it. An agenda comes from ago. Ago is to do, and agenda is a list of things that we're going to do. Seratius comes from, actually I don't know how to say that word, I believe it's seratius. Comes from kera, which is wax, so something that is seratius is waxy. And queries, coming from quairo, which is to ask, so queries would be questions. Also on your test, you're going to have to choose words using context. Hopefully I listed those, I did not. Okay, with Quintus Venum, what would I have him doing? If Quintus Venum, think about the vocabulary words that we've had. Look at these three, and I want you to choose a word, even though I haven't given you any over here on the right-hand side. I want you to choose a word that best goes with the action, with the doer and the accusative, with the nominative and accusative that are available. So hit pause and see if you can get these right. All right, if Quintus is doing something to wine, he's probably vivit. I look at Quintus, that is a third person, so I'm going to use T. If a poeta is doing something to a verse, he is probably recita. He's probably reciting a verse. If the old man is doing something in a chair, he is probably sedit. So trying to figure out what verbs that we can use in context is fairly important as well. Storylines. I'm not going to go over all these storylines that we've had, but make sure you go through those stories and remember what happens in each of those stories. Cultural words that you need to be aware of are here: ideal, basilica, forum, duoweary, tribunal, Apollo, Isis, Jupiter, Laris, and Venus. Again, I'm not going to go over those. You can hit pause, look them up in your book. You're going to have to be able to describe the locations in the forum and the actions that take place in those locations. We'll get to that here in a second. I'm going to go back up here really quickly. I want to talk about the use, once again, sorry. I want to talk about the use of these endings O, S, and T. When I use ego, the ending that I'm going to be using with it is O. Make sure that you remember that. I'm going over it again for a reason. You need to know that O and ego belong to each other. You also need to know that S and to belong to each other. You also need to know that T goes with a singular nominative. So if I use ace, the Latin subject would be to. If I use sum, the Latin subject would be ego. Make sure that you understand what those endings do, those O, S, and T's, along with the sum, ace, and S words. Make sure you know what pronouns that you're supposed to use for those. All right, let's go back down here then. These are the cultural questions selected from me. You have, I think, like 20 of them on your test. Here's a couple that will help you get some of those right. Who were depicted by the statues in the forums? Your answer is, and my answer is, the famous citizens. What did Umacha do to enrich the forum? Your answer is, mine is that she poured money into it, especially for the cloth workers union. How did people receive the news and bulletins? They would have been on boards, bulletin boards, the white wall boards that they would have written down messages. These messages would include anything from asking a public official to stop an act or stop a crime to, when a party was going to happen. Where would the town's government body reside in the forum? Your answer is, and I'm not going to tell you. What was the largest meeting hall in the forum and who resided in it? Your answer is, and I'm not going to tell you. What parts of their life did Romans believe the gods controlled? Well, pretty much every part of their daily life. And I've got to sneeze. I'm sorry, you're going to have to bear with me in my allergies. What kind of shops were in the forum? Remember, we found some vegetable shops in the back there with some meat shops. Of what was the streets in the forum constructed? That would be pavement, stones, etc. What god or goddess was believed to take an interest in Pompeii? Remember, that was Venus. She was very important to the Pompeians. They believed that she did take a special interest in their city. Where would political speeches be held? We had a couple of places. One of them was on the steps of the Temple Jupiter. You would have seen them, I would think, also throughout the forum, but that would be the main one. A detailed map of monuments and important buildings. Here we go. I've listed on the left the things that I want you to put on the right. So I want you to hit pause, and I want you to try to see if you can locate where these places are on the map. So hit pause and do your best. Okay, let's start off with the Temple of Jupiter. Temple of Jupiter was probably the most important part of the forum as far as size. It was the center of it, and I don't see it over here. Just kidding. This would have been the Temple of Jupiter right here. Um, excuse me. You also had a covered marketplace, which would have been right over here somewhere. Excuse me. Oh man, once again, apologize. Had to change some of these anyway. All right. Let's start with the Temple of Jupiter. Temple of Jupiter would be number one right here. That's the central part. If you're looking into the forum this way, that's what you would see first as you came into the forum. It would be massive. Next we have the marketplace. Marketplace would have been in this area right here. That's where we'd see some of those meat shops, etc. Yeah, oh, I skipped the Temple of Mars. My bad. Temple of Mars would be right in this area. It's got that nice rounded area right back here, the Temple of Mars. Mars were the household gods, fairly important to the Romans in general. The clockworkers meeting hall would be the massive building over here, the biggest building for a meeting hall, number 5. We also have, excuse me, we have a polling station. Polling station is right next to the meeting, right next to the meeting hall, down below it, number 6. Table of weights and measures is going to be down, where is it? It's right here. Typically in a lot of forums, they would have been closer to the marketplace, but this area right here is the one that your book has as a table of weights and measures. You also have the Temple of Apollo. Temple of Apollo is a, where's that? There it is, big one. Big temple on the left-hand side would be the Temple of Apollo, right here. You have the Forum Baths. If I wanted to go take a bath, I would go, where's it? Up here. It would be, you got the Temple of Jupiter. Gosh dang it. You have the Temple of Jupiter, and then right above it you have the Forum Baths. So you could go worship Jupiter, and then just go take a bath afterwards. I don't know. Statues of famous citizens would have been all around that area. 11 is where your book has it, but they would have been pretty much all the way around that colonnade. You have a basilica. Basilica is where we would go to court, and we did have a court case, and that is our basilica right there. It does make sense that the office buildings would be just below the basilica. This would be part of the government. This is where I would say that you would have some of those measuring tables, some of the people that were responsible for the weights and measures. Those guys are hanging out here. But those would be their office buildings right there. Okay. As I'm looking into the forum, it has a picture kind of like this. As you look straight ahead, I see a lot of temples, but the big one that I'm looking at is the Temple of Jupiter. I see people walking around. I do see some famous citizens pretty much everywhere. Like I said, all around that colonnade. The table of weights and measures is not visible. It's somewhere over there. He's got right here, they're selling some wine, they're selling some meats and potatoes. What else do we have here? We've got, if I had somebody over here, I'd be giving a speech in the Temple of Jupiter. And these guys right here are still trading. All these guys. I don't know, it's kind of a Mardi Gras look right here. I'm not sure what that guy's doing. If you look at this picture, this gives you a cartoon picture of what's going on in the forum, and some of the things that you can see. You see these guys right here in this colonnade right over here would be protected from rain and from the sun, etc. So if you wanted to go hang out there, you could and be out of it. You can see on the wall here, you can see on the wall that there's some graffiti that probably has some information on it, you know, kind of like a daily newspaper. This one right here would as well. That's that whiteboard that we were talking about earlier. This guy right here is probably checking out to see the news of the day. So as you look at this, be aware of all the things that you're seeing and what these people are doing as well. Okay, well, I'm going to go back up here because this is important. We'll go back up here and then we're done. Make sure that you understand that O equals I in English, that S equals you in English, that the T is going to have a he, she, or it, some kind of noun that goes with it, some kind of nominative noun that goes with it. Also, please remember that ego, the pronoun ego, is associated with O, and it's also associated with soon. Please know that the pronoun to is associated with the S, and then some sort of nominative noun is associated with the letter T. If you do that, you should be in good shape for tomorrow's test. Sorry about the interruptions because of the allergies. You have to forgive me.